lavi mama se aranza nokutanga mama anga bosha nilizu mama vavivinya vamulave mwamano mutamkumaka sapate.
Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
2100 hours Central African time, from the heart of Africa to all the corners of the globe. One planet, countless stories. This is Africa World Hour. We bring you the stories, the voices and the perspectives that matter. 60 minutes of the very latest news developments in and around your world, wherever you're listening, watching from. We bring you the very latest. And of course, we also would like to hear from you what is happening wherever you are, so that we can reflect it back to people who are listening from here on the continent or elsewhere on the globe. Welcome to it. I am Tshepiso Makwetla. Remember, you can reach out to us, share your thoughts with us on WhatsApp, +2763 406 9126. Do let us know what is happening wherever you are, the conversations that are shaping your community. Let's start with your top stories this hour.
Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And we start with one of the big stories here on the continent. Zambia's Attorney General Mulilo Kabesha welcoming the Pretoria High Court's decision to repatriate former President Edgar Lungu's body from South Africa, saying he deserves to be buried in the country he once led. The court ruled that public interest outweighs personal wishes, granting the Zambian government the right to bring Lungu home.
I think it's a learning curve that those who intended to become presidents of countries, they must know that they are not restricted to their family, immediate families, but they are spread over to the nation. And so we want to thank the court for having given the judgment. This is how far the government can go. It's to do its responsibility, the responsibility which is given to the government. And we have done what the public wanted us to do.
And whether or not that is indeed consensus, if it is in the public interest, as the Attorney General there says, with something that we're going to flesh out here on the program later on. But let's continue with some of the headlines this evening. Ghanaian President John Mahama also ordering an investigation into a deadly helicopter crash, one of the country's worst aviation disasters, he said. The incident was sparked by national mourning and renewed calls for accountability and, of course, improved air safety. The military aircraft was reportedly carrying 19 passengers when it went down off the coast near Takoradi, and it killed several people, including 2 government ministers.
I shared a close bond with many of those individuals who died. Our nation is grieving, and on behalf of the government and the people of Ghana, I extend my deepest condolences to their families, friends, and their loved ones. And as we mourn, questions about the cause of this tragedy are only natural and important. And I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have both been retrieved.
And going on now to other news in the Democratic Republic of Congo, United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has strongly condemned the surge in deadly attacks by the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels and other armed groups targeting civilians in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo over the past month. Jeremy Lawrence, spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office, has more on this.
According to first-hand accounts received by our office, at least 319 civilians were killed by the M23, backed by members of the Rwanda Defence Force, between the 9th and the 21st of July in 4 villages in the Rutshuru territory of North Kivu province. This is one of the largest documented death tolls in such attacks since the M23's resurgence in 2022. Most of the victims, including at least 48 women and 19 children, were local farmers camping in their fields during the planting season.
In Mozambique, as workers say, more than 60,000 people have been displaced in a new wave of fighting in northern Mozambique. And half of them, they say, are children. The BBC's Shingai Nyoka has more on the gravity of the situation.
A recent surge in heavy fighting in Cabo Delgado has uprooted nearly 60,000 people, half of whom are believed to be children. Some have been separated from their families. Save the Children said that in one district, armed groups targeted homes, police stations and schools with reports of looting. The impact of the 8-year conflict has been devastating to children, some of who have witnessed beheadings and been at risk of exploitation, child marriage and recruitment into non-state armed groups.
And the German government says it will not approve any exports to Israel of military equipment that could be used in the Gaza Strip until further notice. The statement by Chancellor Friedrich Merz came in response to Israel's plan to expand its military operations there, as the BBC's Bethany Bell reports.
Germany is one of Israel's staunchest allies. Mr. Merz said the release of the Israeli hostages and negotiations for a ceasefire were Germany's top priorities. But he said that Israel's plans for even tougher military action in the Gaza Strip made it hard to see how that could be achieved. Under these circumstances, he said, the German government would not approve any exports of military equipment that could be used in the Gaza Strip until further notice.
Stella Longwe pamalonje
palitu sokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusati kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwino.
Ayi aziwoneka yonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka. Akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And Africa World Hour, it continues in just a moment with our top stories. But first, let's tell you about this. SABC is pleased to announce the launch of a new self-registration platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform on our website. Just simply go to https www.sabc.co.za and /SABC/ and just under e-tenders or self-register, you go then to the https link that says etender.sabc.co.za, and of course all you have to do is follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we will be speaking to Zambia Socialist Party leader Dr. Fred Membe in just a moment. It's about this. The repatriation of the body of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu will have a wait a while longer. This as his family have filed papers again for leave to appeal the Supreme Court of Appeal in Pretoria's decision. The appeal comes hours after the Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwaba ruled that Lungu's body should be repatriated back home to afford him a state funeral. Emotions ran high in the Pretoria High Court earlier today when Lungu's sister Bertha wailed uncontrollably in the public gallery. Sibahle Mota was there and has this report.
Just hours after the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ruled that the body of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu should be repatriated to his homeland for burial, the Lungu family filed papers for leave to appeal at the Supreme Court, meaning the repatriation process will again be stalled. Hours before the appeal was filed, emotions ran high in the Pretoria High Court after Judge Aubrey Ledwaba ruled that the body of former President Edgar Lungu should be repatriated.
Are you in front of the camera? Yes.
This as the full bench agreed to unanimously grant the Zambian government's application to have President Lungu buried at home in a state funeral. The judgment has not been well received by the Lungu family, especially his sister Bertha, who wailed uncontrollably in the public gallery on Friday.
Are you in front of the camera? Yes. Can we go?
The Zambian Attorney General, Mulilo Kabesha, welcomed the ruling, saying the judgment was just because Lungu should be buried in his home country of birth because he was the president.
I think it's a learning curve that those who intend to become presidents of countries, they must know that they are not restricted to their family, immediate families, but they are spread over to the nation. And so we want to thank the court for having given the judgment. This is how far the government can go. It's to do its responsibility, the responsibility which is given to the government. And we have done what the public wanted us to do.
Kabesha says the Zambian government will continue engaging with the Lungu family on the details of President Lungu's burial.
We continue to mourn with them. It's normal that people can be emotional when this happens, but I think it calls for people to cool down. When they are mourning, they will continue mourning like that until when we bury. And that's why it's important that we bury so that we bring the issue to closure.
The notice of appeal has therefore suspended the High Court's order. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
So let's continue with this. We speak now to Dr. Fred Membe, President of Zambia's Socialist Party, about these latest developments and to find out from him exactly what his thoughts are and what are his expectations and, of course, his reaction to the ruling. Dr. Membe, very good evening to you and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Good evening.
An unprecedented set of affairs on its own, I must say. And I think the last time we did address this issue, even from a cultural Afghanist perspective, it seems like uncharted ground. And we heard the wailing from Dr. Lungu's sister in court following that ruling by the Pretoria High Court. Do you think there are others who would echo that sadness, that sentiment, or there are Zambians who are actually happy about the court's ruling and agree that it is indeed in the public's interest that Dr. Lungu be repatriated to be buried back home in Zambia? Dr. Membe?
I think for now, the sympathy of many Zambians, or most Zambians, I'm saying for now, the sympathy of many Zambians or most Zambians is with the Lungu family. The pain they are going through, losing someone, your father, your husband, your brother, is not a small thing. And failing to bury them in time, 2 months in the fridges, I think it's a very painful process for the Lungu family. The judgment definitely pained them more. And it's good they have appealed. There are many questions that the judgment raises that need answers.
Okay, Dr. Member, I wonder if we can improve the quality of the line, because unfortunately it is... I'm going to...
It's the pain.
Yes.
The appeal does not take away the pain. It perpetuates it. It would have been bringing this issue to an end. If the government can say, we have tried our best to do what we wanted to do, and this is the fact.
Dr. Member, I'm going to ask that we call you back again, because unfortunately the quality of the call is not that good, and we are missing out on the essential parts of your message, of your statement. So we continue with the leader of the Socialist Party in Zambia, Dr. Fred Member, for his reaction to the decision by the Pretoria High Court that the repatriation of the body of a former late Zambian President Edgar Lungu will take place, but it might have to wait just a little while longer. As you heard, the Lungu family is now filing appeal papers in the Supreme High Court to challenge that decision.
Channel Africa, where every moment is an African celebration. Feel the energy, feel the connection. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business. Comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me suis dit, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tshepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And we go back to Dr. Fred Member for more reaction on the Pretoria High Court ruling that the body of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu be repatriated back to Zambia to be buried there, saying that it is in the public interest. Meanwhile, as we've mentioned, his family is filing court papers to appeal the decision at the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now, back to Dr. Fred Member, you are saying that you believe that many Zambian nationals echo the pain, the sentiment expressed by former President Edgar Lungu's sister in court. And what is the litmus test for this? You say you have it on good authority. Is it based on the sentiments that have been publicly expressed, or what is behind that sentiment?
Well, I cannot speak for her. But when a person is in pain, the way she is, so many things are said. In the Zambian tradition, they say when someone is mourning, they have the liberty to say whatever they say, and you don't hold against them. You don't hold it against them. So when one is mourning, they can say whatever they want to say. But it's a painful period for them. Their relative, their brother, their father, their husband has been in the fridges for almost 60 days now. 2 months. That's a long period. They needed to bring a closure to this. Losing someone dear, someone so close, is a very painful process. Not being able to calmly and quietly bury them is additional pain. The judgment of the court today leaves many questions that deserve honest answers. And I think the family has decided to appeal against that judgment. And I think rightly so. That appeal does not put a closure to everything. Yes, it stops the process of the Zambian government taking the body of Mr. Lungu back to Zambia. It stops that. But it continues the pain of the family for more and more days, which we don't know when this process will end. The best thing would have been for the Zambian government to say, we have done the best that we could in our desire to bring back the body of President Lungu for burial in Zambia. We leave it to the family to decide what they want to do. They are the most affected. They are the most pained than any of us. They feel the burden, they feel the loss.
I want to ask you as a lawyer. As a lawyer, I'm sure you've read the judgment, and I want to talk about your understanding of how the court reached this decision. And it seems to, from what the judgment implies, have looked at the developments up until the point where there was a disagreement between the two families. But the legal test that the Pretoria High Court says it applies, is it in sync with what Zambian law would then say on this matter?
That's what is shocking to some of us who are lawyers in Zambia. The law that the Pretoria High Court was depending on does not exist in Zambia. There is no such law in Zambia that the court was referring to. There isn't any such law. And I can challenge anyone to bring the law. There isn't any such law that the court was depending on. So we are shocked here. To say the least, the judgment leaves many questions that need answers.
Dr. Member, is that not as a function of the fact that South Africa applies Roman Dutch law, whereas Zambian law, I understand, is English common law? Is that not where the disjuncture lies?
It doesn't even lie there. Even if both of us were using common law, there would still be the same issues. Mm-hmm. There would still be the same issues. And also that issue is not strictly an issue of the law of contract. It's not an issue of the law of contract. And also, if it was a contract, they had to scrutinize the breaches in the contract.
I wonder if I could ask you to move around, Dr. Member, and hopefully see if the connection between us improves. So you say it's not an issue of the law of contract. In fact, that it's more than the issue.
The court does not address those issues. So I think the family has done well to appeal the judgment, although it's at greater pain to them.
So the common cause aspects dealt with by the court in the manner in which they are framed.
Victoria misdirected itself. It has passed in many holes.
Dr. Member, I'm asking about...
Without
yes.
sounding disrespectful to the court,
It is really such a pity that such an important conversation that we're having such technical problems. I'm going to see if Dr. Member can hear us again, and we're going to really give it a last-ditch attempt to see if we can get some coherent conversation out of this because of just how bad the signal is. Dr. Membe, so you're saying you wouldn't want to interfere with the courts and obviously their ruling, but it sounded like a criticism or a different perspective was in the offing. Can I ask you to continue with that train of thought?
I think the court also goes on to deal with issues. The orders given were not sought. The remedies were not sought. It was not issues applied for. The bringing in of the Zambian embassy to immediately take the body, that's not what it was sought for. Even the Attorney General had to restrain himself in the interviews he was giving to the media. I think it's good that the family has appealed, and it may help to settle the law better by the Supreme Court.
So, do you anticipate that even though it would be based on, as you say, while there are differences in the types of laws that both countries practice, that there may be a different reading, understanding, or perhaps angle of how the Supreme Court deals with this matter? And in that case, on why would you have such confidence? Is it because it's a higher court?
Well, that's why there's a hierarchy of courts. If you are not satisfied with the lower court, you appeal to the higher court. It was not a decoration. It was meant to serve a specific purpose. And there are many instances where the High Court has misdirected itself. And the Supreme Court has come to a different judgment. So this is no exception. The Lungu family are entitled to an appeal. And they have exercised that right to an appeal to the Supreme Court.
So back to the common cause facts that this Pretoria High Court stated. Are they, as my understanding of common cause?
The Pretoria High Court was trying to rely on Zambian law, to apply Zambian law in South Africa. Unfortunately for the Pretoria High Court, the law they were trying to rely on does not exist in Zambia. There is no such law that the court was trying to refer to or basing its decisions on. So we wonder where that court got that law.
Can you expand for our audience so that they understand what you're talking about, Dr. Membe?
What I'm talking about is, in the Zambian law, the state is required to meet the funeral expenses of the former president. There's no law that says the state should accord the former president a state funeral. There's no law. That's an honor that is given by the sitting president. And it's an honor that he can give to anyone. And even in the past, it has been extended to anyone. An honor can either be taken or rejected. If the president decides to honor you, you can say, I'm not interested in your honor. I have personally rejected an honor. In 2011, the late President Michael Sata decided to honor me on Independence Day for outstanding contribution to journalism in Zambia. I rejected the honor, I refused. And I told him not to remove my name from the books of that ceremony, or I'll not take it nicely. And they had to obey that. There are people who have rejected even Nobel Prize honors. You can't force an honor on a person. It's a privilege.
You raise a very important point, Dr. Membe, and that is on the holding of office and what that comes with. Because listening to the Attorney General, he seems to imply that this is the right thing to do because, and he actually blatantly says that this will send out a message to other people who hold high office in Zambia, that they must understand that these will be their obligations. And I wonder, South Africa has its own state official and provincial official funeral policy manual. Does Zambia have such? And does it stipulate that in taking high office?
Such.
Okay.
We don't have such, unfortunately. If we had such, maybe it could make sense.
But I don't know if in South Africa it actually forces a state president, and I don't speak as a lawyer, but I'm speaking on the basis of a precedent here. We saw former President F.W. de Klerk, who actually was a political an official deputy president post-democracy. He chose not to have a state funeral, and he was granted that right by President Cyril Ramaphosa. So I don't know if there's anything in our law books that forces a state president to also, that it's incumbent on him to be buried in a state funeral. So I want to...
You are very right. Even in the Zambian situation is the same. There's no law that forces the government to give someone a state funeral. There's no law. A sentiment is not law. The desire by the government to honor, to give him President Lungu a state funeral is a sentiment. It's not a law. Because the love the Zambian people might have had for Mr. Lungu is a sentiment. It's not a law.
Because I wanted to say it sounds proprietal in nature, that it's almost as if you are signing away quite a bit of your rights when you say, I take on high office as president of Zambia, therefore it means I no longer have the right to opine or even object because
That's what we may desire to see, but that's not backed by a law. There's no law that says what you're trying to say.
So just finally,
a sentiment is not a law.
So let's focus then on the sentiment.
Is not a court of sentiment. It's not a court of feeling. It's not a court of desire, it's a court of law. And it has to be guided by the law. So what law was it applying? Whether Zambian law or South African law, it doesn't exist. They ran away from applying South African law because they thought they could use the Zambian law. But there's no such law in Zambia. There is no such law in Zambia.
Now, let's finally conclude with this issue of sentiment.
You can look even at the submissions. You can look at this.
Yes, you can continue, Dr. Member.
Submissions. What? Yes.
You're saying you can even look at the submissions?
Yes, there's no law, Zambian law, that was being quoted. And what was being quoted is simply, it says the former president's funeral expenses will be made by the state. There's nowhere in that law where it says the former president has to be buried in such a way. Or what it says, if you incur funeral expenses, you can come and say, government, give us the money we have incurred in burying this former president. But there's no law that says the former president has to be given a state funeral.
All right.
It's not a law.
Dr. Member, finally, on this whole issue of sentiment that it is in the public interest, I wonder what harm and further harm from what you've said already will it cause the longer it takes to bury former President Edgar Lungu? Will people who perhaps initially had supported the government's legal action even themselves spurn the further legal action on the side of government to ensure that he is buried in Zambia?
There's no harm that will be done to any Zambian. There's more harm, more pain that is being endured by the family. Right now, most Zambians, including the current president, is going about his business as normal. The ones who are not going about their business as normal is the Lungu family. They are the most affected. And there's nowhere where it says a body of any citizen, regardless of their status in society, belongs to the state. What about if the body is given to the state and the Lungu family decides to stay away, and all his friends stay away, he will be buried like a prisoner. Mr. Lungu will be buried like a prisoner. Because if the family stays away, it creates an absurd situation, an absurdity. A law that creates an absurdity is not a good law. A decision that creates such an absurdity is not a good decision. Just imagine the Lungu family in its entirety stay away from the funeral. All the friends of Lungu, social and political, stay away from the funeral. The people he never got on with, which is Mr. Hichilema and his league, will be the ones burying Lungu alone. What type of a funeral is that? What type of a good send-off is that? Is that what they wanted to see? If the Lungu family stay away and they go to the morgue and collect the body, bring it to Zambia and bury on their own, no Lungu family, his wife, his children, his siblings are not there. Yes, they can go and pick up some relatives, some remote relatives, and try to pretend they are close relatives. Yes, they can print T-shirts of Mr. Lungu and pretend they are from his political family.
All right.
But that will create an absurd situation. So that judgment has created more problems, and it needs to be appealed.
And on that note, Dr. Fred Member, thank you very much for your time and also your patience for bearing with us, you, our viewers, our listeners, until we were able to establish a more improved line. Thank you very much for your time and your insights. Dr. Fred Member is president of Zambia's Socialist Party, sharing his thoughts on the Pretoria High Court's ruling that the Zambian government can repatriate the body of former President Fred Lungu to be buried in Zambia.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete, koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani, ngati mwakhuzidwa funani chithandizo, chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionesero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Kutenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And you are listening to Africa World Hour, the Friday edition. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've just joined us, 22 minutes to 10 as we wrap up the day's top stories. And now we talk about this matter as Southern Africa continues to face growing challenges in animal health. We talk about its production and collaboration across the region. That has never been more important. The Coordinated Union for Animal Health and Production in Southern Africa, or CUFAPH, recently held a regional meeting, and that meeting was to review progress and the shape of the way forward. We're joined now by Dr. Berhanu Bedane. He's the lead at the CUFAPH to unpack some of the key takeaways from the gathering. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Bedane.
Thank you very much for having me on your program.
So let's just first start with the gathering itself. What was behind it? What was the hope, the objectives of this particular meeting?
Well, the African office, Southern African office of FAO has different technical units, and one of those technical units is the coordination unit for animal production and health, as you mentioned. We call it COFAF. Maybe from now onwards, our listeners may get familiarized with that. So COFAF brings animal scientists, veterinarian biologists together to look into livestock issues, livestock development in Southern Africa. So this meeting was about looking back in the concluded year, 2025, up to this moment, what we have done, and reflect on what is ahead of us, mainly looking into the main challenges facing livestock development in Southern Africa. So that was the intention of the 3-day meeting we had in Johannesburg.
And I see that one of the key focus areas has been the strengthening of technical skills and capacity building. In light of that, what are the major challenges that are facing particularly animal welfare in South Africa, Southern Africa, animal health and welfare?
Well, one of the major challenges we are facing right now is the increasing trend of animal diseases. We call them transboundary animal diseases. If you take the example of foot and mouth disease in South Africa, for example, it was something which was easily controlled in the past. But now the spread of foot and mouth disease in South Africa and other countries in the region is becoming really one of the major challenges. So the capacity of our members, the COFAF members, need to be sharpened so that they can detect early the occurrence of the disease. If it happens, how best we can investigate and conduct laboratory diagnosis, if you like, so that it can come under control. So for this, we need skills. And those skills, as I said, start with the recognition of the disease itself. In some countries, it has been, it was not there for so many years, 20 years, for example, in Eswatini, until recently when FMD occurred. So people who are the field personnel, laboratory personnel, do not know, they are not familiar with the disease. So the skill of recognizing it and properly diagnose it, and then the right way of controlling are really all very much needed, and that is where we are focusing most.
So in line with this, COFAF, I believe, is working on developing a new communication strategy. How long away will that go in creating visibility and highlighting the impact of these diseases and lack of understanding in some cases, or how better understanding can help improve the situation on the ground?
Two issues there. One is the awareness we are creating among the farmers, the rural community, and those along the value chain, how to control this disease. So awareness creation is very important. Communication in general was one of the main topics of our discussion. If we work very hard, unless it is reported, unless it is communicated, it is as good as it never happened. So communication really is very important. Visibility is very important. And we took time to discuss about our capacity in communicating, creating visibility for our work, so that we are also fulfilling the accountability with the donor community. Most of our initiatives are financed by donors. So visibility is really very important, and we focused on that, on how best we can sharpen our skills in communicating effectively, how we can package our visibility materials and disseminate to larger audience. At the same time, the awareness creation at farmers level, as mentioned earlier, is very important for the community to get involved in the activities we are conducting in the field.
What other resources are you trying to mobilize for if you're talking about improved integrated animal health and production efforts?
Resources, let me just point out that FAO is a technical agency and we are not donors. We rely mostly on goodwill of the financing community, the donor community, for most of our interventions at country level. What we are doing is one, preventing the occurrence of diseases, as I mentioned earlier. Before, it is much more effective and cost effective to prevent diseases from happening than trying to control, because that becomes now very, very expensive. So that is one area, disease prevention, and preventing disease starts with recognizing it as early as possible. Early warning is what we are calling it. And if it happens, quickly understand what that disease is, what its impact is, how best we can control it, and then respond to control it. So to control disease, you buy vaccine, you deploy personnel in the field to vaccinate against that disease. All these require resources, and we mobilize from different donors. For that, you have to have a very good visibility, what you are doing, how best donor money is used, accountability, and what impact it does among the community. So these all require a very good visibility and very good communication skills.
And having said that, do donor countries face different challenges and conditions to the countries for which they'd be, mobilizing these resources for?
That is true, and it's a bit political as well. Not all donor communities would like to finance, across the board all the countries. So we at FAO have a skill in targeting which donors for what type of interventions. Because they are very much selective. Some of them wanted to work on certain areas, certain interventions, and that is a skill really to see which donor has preference for which geographical area, for which type of interventions. One thing I would like to maybe bring up for our listeners is the shrinking or reduction in donor funding in recent months. Let me call it maybe from the start of the year. Donor community are mostly reducing their support specifically for African countries, and this is a new challenge we are facing. So we have to look into alternative ways of mobilizing resources, tapping to non-traditional way of accessing funding to finance our interventions.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll get another opportunity to speak to you again, Dr. Berhanu Bedani, lead of the Coordination Union for Animal Health and Production in Southern Africa, COOPFAP, as he says. So we've learned a new word, a new term today. Thank you so much for speaking to us. And I hope to learn a little bit more from you and your organization and how you work together with the FAO or FAO. Well, that brings the time to just about 11 minutes to 10. We're going to wrap up the program in just a moment. And this time we're going to talk about youth affairs.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. Annie Kalonji. sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste, et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
Yes, ABC is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-regulation platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC within the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform by simply going to our website. Go to www.sabc.co.za/SABC, and under e-tenders or self-register, go to that e-tender.sabc.co.za and follow those prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio.
All right, so we end with this. Africa being the home of the world's largest youth population, yet too often young people remain underrepresented in decision making and development. So that's why the Youth Day of Service, YDOS 2025, now in its 6th edition, is calling on young Africans to take their action into their communities throughout the month of August under the theme of From Ideas to Impact. The campaign is led by Leap Africa in partnership with Dow and others, and has already mobilized thousands of youth-led service projects across the continent. Speaking to us now about this is Amabele Nwakanma, Director of Programs and Partnerships at Leap Africa. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Amabel. Can you first just start by telling us about Leap Africa and what it does and how it came about?
Right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very pleased to be here. My name is, like you said, my name is Amabel Wakama. I am Director of Programs and Partnerships at Leap Africa. And Leap Africa is a youth leadership development organization based out of Nigeria, but doing projects and interventions and programs across the continent. And really, in a snapshot statement, our reason for being is youth leadership. We believe that the future of our continent is dependent and contingent on the leadership, the skills, the capacity of the young people we have, who are our greatest resource, and their critical mass as well. So we exist to bridge interventions along 5 programmatic areas: employability, entrepreneurship, education, active citizenship, and health and well-being. And our Youth Day of Service sits under our active citizenship pillar, which focuses on catalyzing and optimizing and galvanizing young people to take up space and lead community development initiatives that are targeted at bridging the SDG gaps in Africa.
And, as we were speaking about this, my mind cast back to one of the 2 programs you spoke about in Nigeria that I have great admiration for, its establishment and how it's been run, Yaga, as well as Not Too Young to Lead. So taking these 2 programs as examples on what they've achieved and what you are trying to build on, can you just tell us about where there are gaps and what can be done to overcome these challenges?
So the big gaps is, like, young people, although we talk so heavily about having the youngest population in the world, the fact that we have over 70% young people in Africa, and we have all these wicked problems, quote unquote, and the challenges that we face as a continent, you don't see the commensurate investment and inclusion of young people, especially when it comes to civic participation and civic activism. So you have a few exceptions to the cases, but the majority of young people are not fully empowered and resourced and skilled and enabled to lead and they have the capacity to do so. That's what we all say. That's what we all believe. That's what we all know to be true. They're usually in their productive prime. They are energetic. They're creative. They're entrepreneurial. But a lot of the time, they're very disempowered. So movements like you've mentioned, Yaga, Not Young to Lead, Leap Africa, we come to, and these are partners, by the way, of Leap Africa. We come together to say we need to be spearheading that inclusion, to say that they should take up space, they should be empowered, and they should be resourced to bring their ideas to life and lead.
And again, for instance, I'll mention Samson Itodo, somebody who I know is a colleague, is a brother who I have great admiration and respect for. You know, what he has done in terms of investing in himself, but investing in other young leaders, I've always found as very progressive, because I've been and moderated many discussions, particularly with young people. There's an infantilizing of young people and treated as a cosmetic exercise in some cases, when you say, right, we're bringing them onto the table. But if you look at allocation of time to articulate ideas, bring ideas to the table and actually implement them, they're often given the short end of the stick.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And that's what we're trying to bridge at Leap Africa through Youth Day of Service and other projects, which is, how do we not give them the short end of the stick? How do they get the long end of the stick? How do we start resourcing and investing in them early? How do we support their endeavors, support their agency, support their capacity and their leadership, and then create those spaces with them, for them, so that they can be very transformative and become change agents and lead and do more things that we expect them to do, so that the continent is shifting and moving the needle, especially when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Speaking about the SDGs, there's this notion of giving young people a voice when we know they already have it, and they're the ones who actually are experiencing the challenges, but who are also, you know, whose fate is in their hands once they've been empowered, capacitated to be at the forefront of, you know, resolving their own problems. Do we need a mind shift as well in that thinking, that we need to give young people a voice? And how do we ensure that young people take those platforms without seeking permission from their so-called elders or superiors in the political, civic society sphere, etc., etc.?
And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is the mindset shift. Too often when you speak to a lot of young people, and I'm talking not just about the urban young people who may have more exposure, but I'm talking about young people across Africa who are in rural and peri-urban areas, there is a sense of, it's almost like a defeated mindset sometimes, like the sense of things are happening to them, they don't have the power to make such a change or the change that they wish to see, so they just kind of coast through life thinking, you know, there's nothing I can do, because that empowerment hasn't really happened. And so again, our reason for being at Leap Africa and through this Youth Day of Service is to say, we know that you can do. We don't only want to tell you that you can do, we want to support you to do by resourcing you, by helping you build the skills and the capacities, and then by supporting you to be in rooms, creating the opportunities to use your voice. Because you're right, they do have their voices. They're not, you know, they can speak. But where are those voices being amplified? That's where you and me and our stakeholders and ecosystem actors come to play, to say, let's create spaces where they come in, they can lead, they can spearhead, they can speak, and it's amplified and platformed.
And what kind of ideas are they coming up with, Amabel, to, you know, shift the playing field, to move the tectonic plates and own the space?
You know, so Youth Day of Service is SDG focused, which means that we're saying whatever SDG is relevant to you in your community, where you are, we want to support you to take action on it. So from waste recycling, upcycling, to planting of trees in coastal areas, to poverty reduction interventions, to menstrual hygiene, SRHR support. There's a plethora and a myriad of different interventions and different projects that these young people take up. The minute they know that they'll be supported, that they can be resourced, that they can be encouraged, they are more than willing. They actually want to do something. A lot of times they're just not empowered to do so. So you're seeing them actually identifying what the problem is in their communities and saying, well, I want to do something about this. And we come in and partner with them on it.
And briefly, outside of your partnerships, your organizations, your call to action to communities, for instance, what can you and I do outside of our own, civic activism space, but as individuals in our communities, what can we do to support these efforts?
Well, speak about it, encourage young people to go register, to volunteer, or to lead a project, because this is really a volunteer campaign to say, use your time and effort to transform your communities. So we can share about it. We can also resource them. We can also even lead projects ourselves or volunteer. One of the things that we do at Leap Africa is we get all our staff to volunteer in the season, and even throughout the year. We get our funders. So like Dow, you mentioned, they always join us for a volunteer specific project around the continent because they have offices around the continent. We have partners who join us, different corporate partners, government partners, third sector partners. So we're all volunteering alongside these young people and supporting the work that's happening. So these are ways that we can contribute. And sometimes people are resourcing. They're saying, I want to fund, I want to support a change maker with a project. I will handle that, this for one project lead, and they'll support that way. So there are different ways we can join in.
Well, Amabel, you have my commitment, my pledge that I will volunteer to moderate whatever discussion you have wherever around these issues. It is part of my efforts as well. I'm an SDG 3 activist as well, but also just in terms of adolescent representation of rights, it's something I'm very passionate about. So that's why I can talk about Yaga and Not Too Young to Lead, because I've done work with them and I think it's an amazing work that they do. Thank you so much, Amabel, and best of luck to you and your cohorts. Amabel Nokanma is Director of Programs and Partnership at Leap Africa, speaking about the 2025 Youth Day Service Campaign. That's it from Africa World Hour this Friday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, your listening and viewing here on Channel Africa. And of course, happy Women's Day for tomorrow. Until the next time, goodbye.
When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio.
Hotlines bring you fresh perspectives about life.